Morning, everyone. We will begin our session by reading our land acknowledgement statement. As we gather here for the Spring Diversity Forum, we acknowledge that the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater exists today on the traditional lands of many Native people. We welcome the duty and the opportunity to share stewardship of these lands. While this state institution has a rich history, for thousands of years, this region and these lands were home to a diverse Native peoples. In the knowledge and understanding of this history, we acknowledge that the land on which the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater now exists was and remains the historic and traditional territory of many Native peoples. The Ho-Chunk grew corn and gathered a living on these lands. The Potawatomi, then closely related to the Ojibwa and Odawa peoples, called this land home as well. We welcome and are honored by the responsibility to be good stewards of these lands and good neighbors to all Wisconsin indigenous populations. In concert with the Native American Cultural Awareness Association, Native students, with faculty and staff, the university continues to explore durable and meaningful ways of acknowledging our relationship. We recognize these great Native nations and their respective sovereignties and are thankful to be positioned in such prominent, historic, and meaningful landscapes as we continue to provide educational opportunities for all whom the university serves. At this time, I would like to bring to our podium our Chancellor, Dr. Dwight C. Watson.
Well, good morning, my friends. How are you all? All right. Please deal with my craggy voice. I just wanted to welcome you all in all audiences. I'd like to say I'm humbled and honored to be the 17th Chancellor here at this legacy university. At UW-Whitewater, we strive to affirm diversity in all the forms. We work to make the campus a place where all people belong and all people are celebrated. And all people are embraced with their inherent values. We reinforce the truth that we may be different, yet we have connections and affinity as members of the Warhawk family. On campus, our campus values speaks to those truths about UW-Whitewater. Let me remind you of our 6 values: collaboration, diversity and opportunity, integrity, learning and academic excellence, service and social responsibility, shared governance. You may have heard me say, but I want these values to be not just posted on the walls, but also to walk the halls. You have chosen to walk these values by taking part in the celebration of diversity and opportunity, as well as service and social responsibility. Thank you for being Warhawks who value the things that makes this world a more just place. The theme of our Diversity Forum is telling our stories. It's a 3-day event of reflection and celebration. I hope each of you will share your story to another Warhawk. Many of you know my story as a black gay man who grew up in the segregated South in some very interesting times. And if you don't know my story, please come and talk to me, and I'll be willing to talk to you about it. I think owning and embracing your identities is a process. At 58, I feel very actualized around my blackness and around my gayness, but it took me 58 years to get here. I hope it doesn't take you all 58 years to find your place of authenticity. Owning and embracing your identities is a process. I challenge each of you to embrace yours and to be proud of them. The next 3 days will bring a number of opportunities for you to engage with faculty and staff and students around their stories. On Wednesday at 11 a.m., Dr. Kenny Yarborough, our Chief Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer, and Georgia Georgia Stitt will talk about their experiences growing up in rural West Tennessee, and what a story that must be. Georgia, a renowned musician and composer, champions equity and inclusion in her profession. And Dr. Yarborough often shares that his high school held 2 proms, one for white students and one for black students. Dr. Yarborough and Ms. Stitch will talk about their own experiences and how those experiences influence their lives and continue to influence their work today. Hearing from these 2 individuals will give us insight of their stories and how their lives are impacted living in the same community but with different vantage points. It's promising to be an interesting discussion. And the keynote speaker on Thursday will be Dr. Jorg Vandian from our sister campus, UW La Crosse. Dr. Vandian is, I'm pronouncing this horribly, what's his name? Dr. Jorg Vandian, thank you. Dr. Vandian is a professor in student affairs administration who specialized in men and masculinity in higher education. He will share his own journey and how we can all better engage straight white college men in social justice work. There are other events which you can find in the email newsletter, Warhawk Weekly, and on posters around campus. And for more information, you can contact Dr. Yarborough's office. This morning, you will have an opportunity to engage with campus leaders on the topics of academic freedom and freedom of expression. This topic is very important to me. In fact, when I came here, I had conversations about what does academic freedom mean, what is freedom of expression, where are places in which people can be expressive, what are some of the controversial touch points around these 2 very important principles of the academy. And I'm glad that we will have a panel of experts to talk about this. Our provost, Dr. Greg Cook, our interim vice chancellor for student affairs, Dr. Tanya Wesley, police chief Matt Keederlin, and Dr. Kenny Yarborough will host the panel to talk about these vital elements in not only teaching our philosophy, but also our constitutional rights. And I look forward to an honest and courageous conversation. Those of you who have heard me speak before, I talk about having courageous conversations. When we have a courageous conversation, we must first speak our truth. We must experience the discomfort, because sometimes there are some discomfort. Because we only have an hour in order to engage with this panel, you can expect and accept non-closure. You're not going to get all your answers, all your questions answered. But I want you to stay engaged with this topic and other topics that deals with diversity and your own authentic self. Again, thank you for being a participant in our Spring Diversity Forum and for supporting our campus values and our commitment to making sure everyone feels like they belong at UW-Whitewater. I feel like I belong here, and I want you to belong as well. Hey, thank you. So, Dr. Yarborough, I'll turn it over to you and the panel.
So we appreciate the time that you all have joined us on today to talk about academic freedom, freedom of expression, and how our campus community should respond and react to that. As Dr. Watson mentioned, when he first came here, he was very interested in how our campus dealt with the topics of academic freedom and freedom of expression. And we know that there have been some occasions on campus where people didn't quite understand and they felt disenfranchised about some of the happenings on campus. And so these persons that are seated to my right, we have been in conversations about academic freedom and freedom of expression and how our university police fix into it. So today we're going to have each one of them talk about those topics from their vantage point. We are working on a electronic medium. I cannot remember if we said a Canvas portal But it's going to be something that we will house on the university website that talks about academic freedom, freedom of expression, and how the police intertwine into that. So we know that there are UW system policies and state and federal statutes that guard individuals' freedom of expression, but we've not had, since I've been here, a discussion about that fully for our campus. So we're going to turn it over now to the persons that are seated to my right. Our interim provost, Dr. Greg Cook, is going to start with academic freedom, followed by our interim vice chancellor of student affairs, Dr. Tanya Wesley. Will talk about freedom of expression, and then our chief of police, Chief Matt Keeterlin, will talk about the police's role and how they respond to both academic freedom and freedom of expression.
Thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. Since I serve as the Chief Academic Officer of the university, I did just want to take a few moments and speak about the concept of academic freedom. And what I'd really like to stress here with you this morning is that as a society, we look toward our colleges and universities as entities that are specially situated to help us discover the truth, to help us discover new knowledge, to explore new theories, new ideas about the world, to understand ourselves, and both inward and outward and beyond. And more than any other institution in society, we really look to our colleges and universities, and in particular our faculty, to provide that. So anytime a faculty member is hired at a college or university, they have two main priorities. They have a priority to do research, that is, to conduct research in their specialty fields and their disciplines, to contribute to new knowledge, to help winnow the truth and understand the world, and convey that, express that in published articles or in presentations and whatever other format is appropriate for their discipline. So that's one duty and responsibility that all faculty have as faculty members, is that they do the research that helps society understand itself and understand the world. And one thing that I've always said is that's an important thing that distinguishes faculty from teachers. Teachers can teach the knowledge and teach the understanding, but faculty have a special duty, a special responsibility in society to not only teach it, but to produce it. And then the second main duty is then to teach it. So to teach what's considered to be known in the discipline, or what the main ideas are in the discipline, and what the state of knowledge seems to be in the discipline at that time. Now, I'm talking about all of that as background because a core value of all colleges and universities, in order for faculty to be able to do those two things, that is, to seek the truth in research and then teach the truth in the classroom, is they have to have protection. They have to have protection from political bias and political forces that might find certain research findings to be inconvenient or incongruent with their worldview. They have to have protection from business interests who might want to advocate that you'll sell more products if the truth is skewed this way as opposed to that way, or what have you. So faculty, in order to perform those two responsibilities that are important for society, have to have the academic freedom to explore the truth as they see it and as their discipline sees it, and then to teach the truth in the classroom without censorship, without outside forces putting pressure on them to decide what should be taught or not taught, or what should be researched or not researched. And without that academic freedom, society loses that tool, that fount of knowledge that we count on to understand what the truth is. So AAUP, the American Association of University Professors, in 1940 wrote a statement, and the statement still holds true today. In other words, they've looked at it periodically over the years and said, we're going to revise the statement, and then they look at it and say, no, the statement's fine. It still is what it is. So I'm going to quote just a couple of lines from the 1940 statement on academic freedom. So there are two things I'm going to point to. One, it says, and it uses the word teachers, but substitute faculty. Teachers are entitled to full freedom in research and in the publication of the results. They are entitled to full freedom. Their department chairs can't tell them what to research. Their deans can't tell them. The chief academic officer can't tell them. I'm sorry, Chancellor Watson, you can't tell them. Business can't tell them. Government can't tell them. They are entitled to full freedom in research and in publication of the results. And then the second thing, teachers are entitled to freedom in the classroom in discussing their subject. But, and there's a but in the 1940 statement, and this is important, but they should be careful not to introduce into their teaching controversial matter which has no relation to their subject. So now we have rights. Faculty have the right to be unfettered in the search for truth and in the teaching of truth, but they also have a responsibility to teach the subject matter germane to the course, and not to use the course and the facade of academic freedom as a means to do anything they want in the course and to talk about any topic they want and to stray off topic. They have that responsibility. So that's the tension when it comes to academic freedom, and we have to judge that as to whether the faculty are teaching the subject that's appropriate to the course, or are they straying afield and using the soapbox and their opportunity and their power with students to do something else that's beyond the course. And to have the integrity and respect of the right, you have to uphold the responsibility. So those are just some comments I want to make on academic freedom, and this all gets down to tenure and the protection that we give faculty as a special source of information and the way we convey information in our society. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Is it still morning? Technically, it's still morning. It's 11:21. So good morning, everyone. You know, when Kenny convened us and brought us together and wanted us to talk about this topic of academic freedom and freedom of expression or free speech, a lot of this topic touches my world because we deal with the grievances or the complaints that students and some faculty and staff may have when we have visitors come to campus that may have an opinion or viewpoint or perspective that they don't agree with, or how those visitors to our campus, where they are located and placed, and how they are carrying out their message across campus. We also have and received students who come to us and complain about what's being said in the classroom. So it's a large part of our responsibility, not only within the Division of Student Affairs, but the institution. And I think we recognize when we convene together what our gaps are. And we have to be transparent in what our gaps are. And I think this is our first step into showing that we recognize that these are very critical and important components to higher education and how we function here at UW-Whitewater. And it's important for us to be able to provide the proper information, because I believe oftentimes, in what has been my experience, when I am informed, I can better equip myself with how to deal with situations that are difficult and how to engage with folks that may have opposing views or a different perspective than what I may have. And so I think we recognize that gap, and that's the reason why Dr. Yarbrough mentioned this website presence that we will be developing. And as I said, this is our first step, but we are going to be putting forward some strategic efforts. And I know Dr. Yarbrough will provide some more information with that. And what I was thinking about in preparing for this is, what is freedom of speech? What is it? What does that mean? How does it impact higher education? What does that look like, and what does it mean for UW-Whitewater? So when we talk about freedom of speech, it's giving an individual or a group the right. They have the right to express their beliefs, their thoughts, their ideas, their emotions about varying different issues and topics without censorship. exactly what Provost Cook just mentioned. And so, as you all know, but I think it's important for us to emphasize how the First Amendment protects those rights of free speech, expression, press, to assemble, is that all of those rights can be contributed to or attributed to all individuals regardless of their religion, their ethnicity, their race, their citizenship, or their sexual orientation. And I think oftentimes what happens, and it's more difficult when we're at a public institution, is because we have to make sure that we're upholding all the principles of the First Amendment rights. And what you'll see in national news, what you'll see on institutions' websites, and even in courts, is this contention between what's being said and is it truly upholding folks' First Amendment rights when individuals perceive statements, messages as very offensive to who a person is, their identities, or what they believe. And when it comes to, as I stated, being a public institution, which we are, we obviously have to uphold those rights, but we do have some control. That control or those restrictions also have parameters. That's just federal law, and it makes this topic very difficult. And so when we talk about freedom of expression and free speech, we as an institution have a right to provide some regulations when it comes to time, place, and manner. So when we think about time, obviously if we have someone coming to campus and they want to share their message and provide their perspective to our campus community, of course we don't want that to happen at 3 in the morning. Or we don't want that to be happening, at midnight. We want to make sure that it's at an appropriate time during operating hours of the institution. When we talk about place, we want to make sure that we're protecting the learning and living community of not just our students, but the rest of the campus community. So no, we don't want to have individual visitors that may come to our campus disrupting what's happening, the instruction in the classroom. So we have the ability to place some restrictions and say, yes, you can still come, but this is the most appropriate place for you to be positioned to have your message heard, but also for us to continue our daily operations on campus. And when we talk about manner, we have the ability and the authority to provide some parameters around manner. No, they can't use megaphones because, once again, that can be something that can disrupt the classroom or other programs or activities that are happening in UC or the other academic buildings. And so those are the things that we want to keep in mind of how narrow our control is when it comes to freedom of speech. And so the other pieces of time, place, and manner, when I talk about that, also has some parameters and restriction. We have to be mindful when we're setting those parameters that it's reasonable, that it's content neutral, so we're not favoring, depending on what the message is of that visitor, we're not providing extra restrictions for one visitor that may have a specific message in comparison to another visitor that may come with a message that aligns with what we believe. So we have to be sure that we can show that we can track that, improve that we're upholding the tenets of the First Amendment. And also, in the last point, I've already incorporated that we're being sure that we're being equitable and we're coming from a very viewpoint neutral decision-making place. The next piece that I just want to briefly mention, and I know we have Chief Keterlin and we want to open up for questions. For me, it's so important to know, not only for this audience, but also that it's a part of our website, that there are 2 federal statutes that do regulate speech. And that's Title VI, which is connected to our Civil Rights Act of, 1964. And then we also have Title IX, which is the Education of Amendments of 1972. They do provide some restrictions to speech, but there's also a very narrow window for that as well. And they provide they prevent discrimination on the basis of race and sex. The offensiveness of speech, that's the point of contention when we're talking about academic freedom and freedom of expression. There are times that people's perceptions is that our visitor's message is offensive. But the offensive speech alone is not sufficient to establish a hostile environment or to hold individuals accountable for violating university policy or even state law. The hostile environment has some criteria it has to meet. It has to be severe. That speech has to be severe. It has to be persistent or pervasive. And it has to significantly, seriously deny or limit a student's ability to participate in or benefit from their educational program. Now, when I read that, my goodness, that bar is very high to hold folks accountable. So when we receive those complaints in the Office of Student Affairs and in the Office of Dean of Students, and we have to respond back and say, we hear you. We understand that this has been offensive. However, we don't have enough evidence to substantiate a violation of university policy. So I hope you all understand you can carry that message forward in understanding that bar is really high to hold individuals accountable. One thing that as we convened together and we spoke with one another, Dr. Cook, as a matter of fact, had a really good point, is what do we do? And I also, Chancellor Watson charged us with this, is we still have a responsibility as an institution to be accountable for the emotional impact messages have on our students, our faculty, and our staff. So what do? We can be more proactive. We have gone out and spoke with a couple of our student organizations who were very offended by some of our visitors. I have brought that information back to the group here, and there's many things, strategic things we can do. Part of that is informing our campus and having a more informed and aware campus with our website and other efforts. The other piece is making sure folks know what their rights as well as their responsibilities are. And as Dr. Cook mentioned in our group conversation, those rights and responsibilities go both ways. It's not only the responsibility of our visitors on campus, but it's also us being a part of this community and upholding the values of this institution. And the part of caring for you, thinking to yourself, when you deal with difficult topics, difficult issues, what are some of your triggers? Being able to understand that about yourself, knowing what your rights are, and how do you manage that? Being able to engage in your support networks, maybe across campus, maybe off campus, to talk through some of those things. Thinking proactively of how you can also engage in free speech to bring your position and perspective forward, and also being aware of what the resources are across campus to support you during those triggering times and difficult times. There's some things, and I'll wrap up, that we discussed of being ahead when we know there's going to be a visitor on campus with maybe a very controversial perspective. Can we get ahead and send a message out to our campus community members and let them know that this person or group will be placed a certain location on campus? Here's an alternate route. And then couple that with what resources we have on campus. Thank you, and I'll pass it along to Chief Keterlin.
Good morning, everybody. So, from the police perspective, our job is to facilitate all parties being able to deliver their message. In doing that, we have to balance supporting the university's values, our policies and procedures, both at the university level and system level, the laws and expectations of the state of Wisconsin, and of course federal law, and ultimately the Constitution. Our job, again, is to protect those rights, not infringe upon them. And oftentimes that can be an interesting balancing act, shall we say. We have to recognize that disagreement with a message, no matter how vile we may find it personally, does not make it illegal or even, frankly, inappropriate. And that is a balancing act, again, that we have to work through all the time. Our goal is to provide for civil discourse. In that, we have to look at, if you see the flyer that I put on many of the tables, we have to balance the individual's ability to speak what they believe and feel against protecting the individual's personal safety. And that's on both sides of the equation. I don't think there's much more I can add that really you haven't already covered. So So I think at this point I'd turn it back to Dr. Yarbrough for questions and answers.
It's kind of stiff. So we would like, excuse me, we would like to open up the floor now. We have persons with microphones so that everyone in our community can listen to the question. So we have one with Chancellor Watson and then one with Dr. Tom. So let's go with Chancellor Watson and then Dr. Tom.
Thank you. This is the Dr. Cook. Recently in the Chronicle and other places, there's a controversial professor who is, I think he was at University of Minnesota Duluth, and his stance is that there's no such thing as the Holocaust. And he also is stating that the Sandy Hook's massacre did not take place. He has been released from his position because of some of his positions, but he still is an active scholar in these places, and he is challenging his dismissal. And he has scholarly evidence, supposedly, that the Holocaust did not exist, and the Sandy Hook's event is really just fake news. In fact, he is being challenged by one of the victims of the Sandy Hook's events, where the father produced a death certificate and other types of things, stating that his child was indeed slain. And he said that's an erroneous death certificate. So what's your thoughts about this expression of academic freedom?
Mm-hmm. Well, my first thought is to quote a wise man who's our 17th chancellor, because he's just caused me to, I think I quote, sit in the discomfort, and maybe even accept some non-disclosure or non-closure, I should say. So anyway. So these are important issues that we get in, and you can see them as they kind of battle out in society and in our discourse. So faculty members as researchers have the right to unfettered research and the right to teach the appropriate material in their courses as they see it, but they also have a responsibility to be professional in what they're doing. Now, I'll take myself as an example. So I'm a psychologist, PhD in psychology, and so when I was operating in the psychology department and conducting research, I'm a member of the American Psychological Association. In the American Psychological Association, the APA has professional standards. And when I publish my research, then I publish in peer-reviewed outlets. And that's what we recognize when we're looking at someone for tenure and promotion in the faculty line, and we're looking at to evaluate the appropriateness of their job performances. We're expecting that they're publishing in peer-reviewed outlets and that they are presenting at conferences that also have peer review. So what that does is that allows the discipline as a community to make some judgment on the validity of the information the person is attempting to promulgate, either as a research piece or as a teaching piece. And as faculty members, we go in and observe one another, and we collect student evaluations and so forth as other means of trying to evaluate the validity of what's happening there. So to me, the tension is going to come down to if the professor here, the faculty member you're talking about, can produce legitimate evidence, and by legitimate I mean evidence that professionals in the discipline agree were collected by appropriate methods that are accepted in the profession and that they uphold the standards in the profession. If this person can produce that evidence, then he or she is on solid ground in terms of doing the research and making the statements and teaching it in the class. But the burden is on the faculty member to demonstrate that the evidence is valid. Now that's true for any of our research. You know, if you were to come to the basement of my house, it's not necessarily an open invitation, but if you were, I have boxes and boxes of old data that go back now some 35 years. But it's because as researchers, we also have the obligation to keep our raw data, because if someone wants to question the validity of our conclusion, we need to be able to produce the evidence that we use to generate that conclusion. And so that's the standard we would apply here in this case. Now, if I'm speaking about the academic freedom the person has and the responsibility of doing research and teaching. Now, it's another matter if someone's going around the country and speaking at events where it's not considered the person's research and it's not in a classroom that they're teaching, but they're presenting their personal opinion and just presenting their own ideas and not representing the profession, then there's a different standard applied.
Hello. Oh, good morning, everyone. So I guess my question is probably for Dr. Wesley. We know there are parameters of individuals coming to campus, some parameters, but are there any parameters or restrictions in regards to materials that people bring, such as posters of aborted fetuses or materials of death or things like that? Are there any parameters on things like that?
What I'll do is give I don't mean to punt, but I'm going to punt because Matt has a better explanation and deals firsthand with it.
In short, no. Really. The message would have to be so extraordinarily offensive or threatening. It's really easier on a threatening level than it is offensive. If it's a threatening message, it's very easy to kind of curtail. But if you're talking, I just take offense to that, no, I would be hard-pressed to come up with something. I really would. It'd be easier with something pornographic than something offensive, to be honest. And even that gets a little hairy. That was maybe not the appropriate word, but that gets a little weird at times.
So we still have opportunities for questions, but I will throw this one out until someone raises their hand. How does hate speech apply, and whether it is in the classroom setting, student to student, or the classroom setting, faculty to student?
I guess this one is my question. I'm looking down and no one's saying, oh, I'll take it.
You can't punt this one.
Right? This is hate speech is divided up. There's hate crimes, and then there are bias incidents. And there's a difference, right? The FBI provides us with a very clear definition for what a hate crime is, and I may have the definition. I do. So I'm going to read it. It's just by happenstance, right? Hate crimes different from hate speech in that all hate crimes are punishable criminal acts that are treated with priority by the federal government due to their extreme impact on groups in society. And so what I think is important to know is that oftentimes people don't understand the difference, right, of what a crime is and what a bias incident is. But if we do have these happening across our campus, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, what's so important for folks to know, the policy that governs specifically students' behavior, and that's what I'm speaking to because that's my realm in the area of control is student to student, or if a student engages or is the accused, right, projecting this inappropriate behavior, then falls under the Dean of Students Office as well. What's challenging with hate speech or offensive speech is that we have Chapter 17, which is our administrative code of conduct that oversees and governs all behavior on campus as well as off campus. If anyone has seen Chapter 17 or read it lately, it does not provide us with any provision or policy that specifically allows us to address hate speech. It just doesn't. It provides us with a very broad statement of harm to self or others. Now, we have to have enough evidence to support that whatever action or behavior or speech caused harm to other individuals or to the person who is the accused. That's a very fine line to walk. And also, I can see a student and have had students, not necessarily here in my time, but other places that I have been, who have appealed that decision and won, because you have to prove intent, which is a very difficult thing to do. The other thing in Chapter 17 that allows us to hold a student accountable is if there is some other university policy that exists within departments or units that specifically states that this type of action or behavior is against the College of Kobe's code of conduct. I'm only saying that because I know that they have a code of conduct there. That even gets dicey because we still have to uphold the tenets of the First Amendment, right, and individuals' rights. So it takes an investigation. We have to look at the policies we do have in place. Do we have enough evidence to support? And then if we do, is the decision unconstitutional? Meaning, is it violating First Amendment rights? So it's difficult. You will find across the nation that many institutions steer clear of trying to create policies because they have found themselves in court. And so that is the very difficult piece of this. My position is, how do we equip our students to deal with difficult conversations, engage civilly, and understand that higher education is an environment and a marketplace of an exchange of ideas. And I think a lot of our approach has been in the Dean of Students office, even if we don't have a policy to hold an individual student accountable, that doesn't stop us from bringing a student in and having a conversation about being a member of this campus community, holding them accountable and the impact their behavior and speech has in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. So it's not a straight answer. And that's academic freedom and freedom of expression for you.
Good morning. I'm hoping that the panel, probably most likely Dr. Leslie, can explain the impact of the new Board of Regents, the changes to the Board of Regents free speech policy, in particular with the disciplinary aspect and what that level is, because there is some debate of what is coded as disruptive and how that would apply to our institution here.
I can't punt this one either. Okay. Well, there is a system policy that was initiated, I believe, in 2017, and this is going off the top of my mind, and it's a little foggy because I have a cold. And it's known as the three-strike policy, where when it comes to academic freedom, freedom of expression and free speech on college campuses here in our system, there is, if a student is found responsible for 2 infractions or 2 incidents of disrupting or hindering freedom of speech on campus, they are to be suspended. The third strike or the third incident is that the student is expelled from the institution. Now, I'm trying to remember every piece of your question, but what I will share, and then you let me know if I've answered every part of it. I'm going to be very transparent. This is a very challenging policy, regent policy, when you put very specific sanctionings in a policy. It puts practitioners in a position where it removes our ability to take each case on a case-by-case basis. It removes our ability to take the position of all the moving parts and factors that play a role in these incidents. And as you all know, in the conduct world, or even just supporting students, there's no one incident that is the same. There's always some type of variance. And so we have had this conversation. It has come up, and I'm pointing back to my colleagues in the back who work in the Dean of Students office and meet on a regular basis with conduct officers across the system. This is a tough policy to uphold because the first person to sanction a student is more than likely going to find themselves in court because of all the factors and reasons of why we just explained. And I know that this is up for conversation. I don't know what changes will be made, but I think that this is something that really needs to be revisited, and I believe the Regents is on that path to do so. I don't know if I answered every part of your question or not.
I guess to help our students navigate this policy, I think the key piece in the update that is really debated is what is classified as disruptive. Because could disruptive be standing up and snapping fingers, saying boo, or is it more on full-on disruptive where the individual can no longer be heard?
I think the intent of the policy is that when it falls into my world, they've started causing disruption. In other words, standing in the back of a room and screaming at the top of your lungs so the other person can't exercise their freedom of speech, and I would be able to take action under a disorderly conduct type situation or that type of thing, that's disruption. I think disruption, the intent is that you begin infringing on the other's individual rights. I think that's the goal. Now, could someone use that in another means and try to do something? Sure, they can, but I think that was the overarching goal and concept behind it.
Good morning. Thank you for this marvelous panel. I believe that my question is for the chief, and I have to see how I can work this into academic freedom. I think I have a question about the integrity of our classroom spaces. And so I've always advised our faculty that if the police come to the classroom and want to pull out one of our students for a nonviolent, offense type question, we should escort the students out of the classroom rather than to invite the police into the classroom, just because for me that creates a kind of tense environment. And so I'm wondering if you can tell me if I've been advising faculty right for the past 10 years.
No big deal. I can't say you've been advising them wrong. I mean, if the individual is going to be kind enough to walk out of the classroom with you and we deal with them there, that's great. But I would advise faculty that is a personal decision based more on the actions of the individual than your own desire. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying there. If the person is disruptive to the point that you're saying you need to leave and they refuse, let them make the choice as to how this is going to end. That's not the faculty's responsibility at that point. So being nice, polite, kind, compassionate, that's wonderful, but remember there's a time that sometimes that doesn't work anymore.
In the news and in cases across the country, we've seen where college students are in their dorms, their study rooms, their classrooms, and their being there has been challenged, whether by other students who attend that institution or by professors who believe that a student should move from the back of the room and come and sit in perhaps the front row. And when they refuse, they've called campus security or the police. What's the stance on that? Because when we see it, we automatically go, oh, this is wrong. The student is a tuition-paying student. They are not trespassing. They have the right to be there. But it seems that once campus police or the police are called, that goes all out the window, even after they produce IDs. So perhaps talk with us through that. Thank you.
Thanks for the easy question. Well, the instructor, the professor, the teacher, advisor, whomever, they have the institutional right to control the classroom. and to control a environment conducive to the academic goals of the institution. If the student is refusing to abide by legitimate requests that affect, again, the educational mission that's being performed in that classroom or space, then we would have we wouldn't have the right, we'd have the authority to enforce that action. Now, am I going to expect officers to go in like jackbooted thugs and drag some kid out of a classroom because he refuses to move from the back of the room to the front of the room? We'd have to have a significant conversation about that. Is that really affecting the academic mission? That might be an area that would be more appropriate to handle through Dr. Wesley's area than mine. And that would be a decision that the officers would have to make on the scene. And we get into those situations oftentimes where you're not going to make anyone happy. But it would be a weighing of what's the real totality of the circumstance and what's really necessary and effective. So the short answer, I guess, is maybe. It really is dependent upon the totality of the circumstance more than anything, dependent upon the level of disruption, the real need for the action to take place, which turns into a judgment call.
Spaces. The other part of that, the students in spaces and being charged with trespassing when they are a student utilizing those spaces.
Well, it'd really have to be, again, it's really the matter of the specific incident. I mean, if you have the legal right to be there, you've got the legal right to be there. If you have the authority of the institution to be there, you have the authority of the institution to be there. Why someone is being requested to leave is the real dependent factor there, and how we would have to respond to that. I can't just throw somebody out because someone says, I don't want you here. It doesn't work that way. It really is dependent upon what is the reasoning for that person to leave.
I'm going to jump. Whoa, that seemed really loud. So I'm Elizabeth Watson, and my question goes around the care and trigger of our students. I know the timing of when people choose to register to do a protest is not always timely. But is there a tool on the university, because I believe it's through university police, they have to register that they're going to be doing a protest. Is there a way to have a place on that website that can be updated that says there's a protest happening in X location? So if somebody will be emotionally harmed by interacting with that group, they have the ability to self-opt out of that path.
We have that ability currently. That's just a matter of a mass notification. Where it gets tricky is it can't be just for specific groups. And, well, all is an easy thing to say, but when I miss one because it was unannounced and no one let us know, now you've got the next one who I do announce has a case of saying, well, you didn't talk about these people. Why? That's a real trick bag to get into. We, by law, have to facilitate freedom of speech. By law, I don't have to in any way, shape, or form make sure you're unoffended or unaffected by that speech. And I think we can put the university in a bad spot by saying, I'm going to try to protect everyone's feelings as opposed to I'm going to try to protect everyone's right to free speech. So that's a trick bag. We can do it, but just because we can, I don't know if we should. I think we could end up in a legal conundrum at some point.
Dr. Yarborough and Dr. Wesley, what would be the circumstances where protesters come into, or an event come into campus would become a bias incident versus freedom of speech?
I'm just moderating. They're the ones that's answering. And we have a question here. But so I know in the last few years, and we've seen this on the news, that there have been many white nationalist groups trying to come on various campuses, and they have the right to come, and they have the right to express their viewpoints and vantage points. And that's protected for them to be able to express that. Where it will dive over into a bias or a hate incident if they specifically start singling people out and singling these groups of people and that group and specifically almost targeting people in that moment. So if they were, let's just say we were having that particular type of rally now, and someone came and got directly into Julia's face, then that then becomes a different story.
Yeah, it moves from, we move the ability to react or restrict when you start seeing overt action against others. If it's just speech, they can say whatever they want all day long, no matter how vile we may feel about it personally. But once they start overt action or really kind of threatened action that they could have the reasonable capacity to carry out at that time, that's when we can move into a different type of action. Bias incidents are very different from bias-related criminal activity. You can have a bias incident because someone says something you don't like. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's enforceable or that we can do anything against it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I'll spare the panel. This is a comment instead of a question. For me, one of the a movie scene that helped express the difficulties and the tension of the First Amendment is actually about I know I'm dating myself. It's a 25-year-old movie called The American President. Near the end of that movie is a press conference that the president is holding, expressing, and finally getting around to acknowledging there's a political debate going on with a conservative opponent for the next election. And he comments about the value he saw in supporting the First Amendment by being a member of the American Civil Liberties Union and the position that the ACLU takes that everybody can utilize the First Amendment and you need to support all of them, even if you want to scream in their face that their opinion is totally wrong or totally opposite of yours. It was one of those small scenes in what is technically a comedy movie or a comedy romance movie, but it was a small scene in there, and it's near the end, but it touched me. It made me understand the tension that the First Amendment creates. And I think for all of us, it's recognizing the tension that is created because that means everybody gets to express their opinion, and we won't agree with everybody.
I'll just echo Dave's comment there. One of the things that we discussed as a group as we were preparing for this is that one thing that helps protect our right to free speech is also the responsibility to tolerate speech of others. You know, I can't have a right to free speech if anyone else's free speech is not tolerated. And I think it gets to that comment that you were noticing there in the movie.
Hi. Recently at Ohio State University, Caitlin Bennett, who is a incendiary figure, very pro-gun, anti-LGBT, made a surprise visit to the campus, and the students reacted harshly. I'm wondering what a situation of that sort would look like on our university campus, and how the university would respond to the students acting out, as well as a surprise incendiary visit.
Oh, I get this? Well, okay. It depends on a number of different factors. In Wisconsin, open carry is legal in public areas. It's actually illegal on campus because of Chapter 18. So if someone was walking around on what are the city sidewalks, nothing, frankly. It's legal. There's nothing we could do. Now, does that mean we're going to not, just go, oh, okay, no big deal, and walk away? No, we're going to monitor that like we would. I don't know the full scale of the incident that you're talking about when you say the students reacted harshly. As long as, I mean, they can follow her around chanting all day long, as long as they're not threatening her or, frankly, curtailing her ability to say or do what it is she wants to legally do. We just monitor it and make sure nothing crazy or stupid happened.
In that situation at Ohio State, that is how the police on campus reacted, and there were a lot of comments on both sides that A, she should have been asked to leave, or B, the students should have been asked to disperse.
I don't see, based on what you're saying, that'd be wrong on either side. Again, what ends up happening is people start putting their feelings into it, right? She didn't like that they don't like her. They don't like her, you know, and I get it, but it's sort of a too bad. Both parties have the right to express what they feel and believe. It's the beauty and the curse of the First Amendment. I mean, it really is. Because the day I say you can't do it, tomorrow you say I can't.
To add on to what the chief is saying, that's one of the, I don't want to say issues, or one of the worries that we have, because his office is not always notified when parties come on campus. And sometimes people will just magically appear and start setting up whatever they want to set up, and then sometimes students, faculty, and staff will be angry that we didn't know that they were coming. And they have the right as taxpayers to come on our campus and to say whatever they want to say. I think when to Chief's point, when our feelings get involved, where they shouldn't be saying that, or they should not be allowed to say such things, good, bad, or indifferent, that's our personal opinion.
Yes.
And so what's the hard part for us to be able to help manage that is we feel the empathy and sympathy from our students and faculty and staff and understand that piece, but we also have to be constitutional. And we have to enact what our civil liberties are, because people have the right to come on our campus and do that.
I think the piece that I would add to their comments, and that's the point of contention. That's what we deal with, right, all the time when this comes up. We have to start being proactive. I think oftentimes in many different arenas across our campus and maybe others, but we're talking about Whitewater, we react to everything. And I think we need to be more strategic in thinking about how do we equip our students, our faculty, and staff to respond to these things. And when you look at the First Amendment in higher education, what you'll see as a theme, or what I've saw as a theme, is the First Amendment will say if there's speech that you find offensive, the encouragement is more speech, meaning exercising your right. And I think us as an institution, and it's not just our responsibilities up here, but it's you all as well. How can we be creative as a community to begin to equip all of us with tips and strategies to deal with difficult incidents and situations like this? And I think it's important, I'll say this again, to inform people, because when you are informed, you are aware, you are able to think about what this topic, or when you deal with difficult situations, how do you internalize that? How do you deal with that? How do you respond? Is it in a healthy way? Is it in a productive way? Those are things we have to begin to think about, because these topics do become personal, especially if it's targeted towards how we identify. And so I think it's all of what has just been said, but also working hard to be proactive and creative as a community so people have the skill sets and tools to deal with the Ohio situation.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Went back.
Sometimes when we have events, after the panel has walked off and made it to their cars, they go, you know what, I wish I had said this. What is it that you wish to make sure you tell us before you leave that you really want us to take away?
That's a good question. I guess the main thing I want you to take away from my world, and I know my world can be a little different, is we are truly here to facilitate both sides of the conversation. I'm going to take a recent example. We have the group every year. We have a religious-based group that comes and they talk against premarital sex and homosexuality and so on and so forth. And it offends a lot of people. I get it. The key is we have to make sure that they have the ability to express that. And we have to make sure our students, staff, faculty, and anyone else that wanders along understand how to appropriately counteract that if they don't feel it's true or it's not in their wheelhouse. And where we're losing things in my world is not the people that come here to express an opinion, it's how we're reacting to that opinion. I've had far more issues there than I've ever had with those that are trying to deliver a message. And I think that goes very well to what Dr. Wesley was saying. We need to start equipping ourselves in such a way that we respond appropriately. Because when we respond appropriately, maybe you'll change the other person's mind instead of reinforcing the thing that you disagree with.
I think I would emphasize the relationship between rights and responsibilities, because as I said before, without the responsibilities, we don't have the rights. They go hand in hand. I really appreciate Dr. Wesley's emphasis on being proactive, because if more of us in the community, as a community, if more of us understand not only our rights, we tend to focus on, well, it's my right to say what I want, but if we could also focus on what our responsibilities are. Our responsibilities to be tolerant, our responsibilities to appreciate the First Amendment rights, academic freedom, freedom of expression of other people. Because as soon as we start to infringe on their right because it offends us, we're infringing on our own rights to speak and be free in our expression. I think Dave Hallbach expressed that very well with a reference to the movie. So if I could just underscore something, it would be just to keep in mind that relationship between rights and responsibilities.
Oh, great. I looked at Dr. Cook's notes and I had mine squared away from his notes, but he covered it. Dang it.
I stole yours. I looked right over there.
So I guess what I would say, since Dr. Cook took mine and his, we're in this together. We are a community. We have and we are dealing with very challenging times. We can deal with this very sensitive, controversial, and difficult topic. And I think it's not to look to just the administrators to have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. It takes us to understand what your experiences are, where you are working and living and learning, and for us to also bring the knowledge regarding the policies, and we come together as a community to be able to address the concerns that are currently out there, and also to be able to prepare for what will come to campus. And I think folks get upset when there's no clear picture of what they have to do regarding their rights and their responsibilities, but also what the policies are that governs these actions and behaviors. And when we don't know and we aren't aware, we become very afraid and fearful and upset and angry. But the more we equip ourselves with this knowledge, it gives us a better opportunity to respond in a way that's going to be healthy for the community. So I guess I'll end with that.
I guess my vantage point to this is, and it goes along with what the provost stated, we have to teach our campus community how to be tolerant of different vantage points. It's easy in our microcosm of a university community to get offended quickly, but the world is offensive. It's going to be something at Walmart, it's going to be something at Taco Bell, it's going to be something at the mall that's not going to rub you the right way. And when you're in those settings, you can't go run and tell somebody. So you have to learn how to deal with it. You have to learn how to deal with your own triggers. And I think as we continue to help shape our campus community, this is a preparation for what the world is like. I don't like everybody's speech that I encounter every day, but I have to deal with it. And what I have learned to allow things that impact me negatively to do is to strengthen the resolve that I have internally. So if there's someone saying something that I am polar oppositely against, that's going to help solidify my vantage point of why I believe what I believe. You have the right, you have the availability to choose what you believe, but so do I. And I don't have to accept what you say. I can respect you as a person to say that's your opinion and learn how to disagree civilly. And I'm hoping that in our conversations, we can bring back the art form of civil discourse, where we don't have to agree on every issue, but that doesn't mean that I look down on you as an individual. And I'm attacking your personhood just because you don't think like me. So those are some of the things that I hope that we can continue to foster, and to have conversations that we can have, as Dr. Watson has stated to us, and my colleagues that are on cabinet can attest to this. When he came here, Dr. Watson told us he wanted us to learn to sit with discomfort. And every decision and every meeting since then, I think we've had a lot of discomfort. But we've had to learn to process it. And so that's one of the things that I hope for. And as I stated earlier, the four of us are working to create an online place where you can have questions answered. We're going to have some FAQs about academic freedom, freedom of expression, how the police are intertwined in that, what hate speech is, what biased speech is, so people can have the tools at their fingertips to get the knowledge that they need. So that's forthcoming. I do want to thank everyone for attending this particular opening session of our Spring Diversity Forum. Tonight, or this afternoon rather, at 5:15 in this room, we will have cultural conversations. Last semester we had this, and Dr. Oz helped me. I think we had about 130 students. 130 students and about 15 faculty and staff. So we were trying to figure out how this was going to work, but it was a wonderful exercise where our students were able to engage in conversations that they're not easy to have, but they did it. And so I would encourage you, if you can this afternoon, to drop by for that. Tomorrow in the morning session, we will have Georgia Stitt. Georgia Stitt is a world-renowned composer, musician, pianist. She does a lot of social justice in her work on and off Broadway and in and off recording studios. And ironically, she and I are from the same place. And so she has a very different lens of growing up in rural West Tennessee as a white woman as I do as a black man. And so we'll talk about that and how that has shaped her and her ability to do the work that she does. And then at 1:30, she will be in residence at our College of Arts and Communication, working with our students. So they'll be performing some of her pieces, and they will be exposed to what she does on a professional scale. On Thursday, we have our Diversity Day Conference. We have a lot of different topics that will be available to you to consume. Our featured speaker there is Dr. Jorg Vanderen from UW-La Crosse. We experienced him in December at the Hate Bias Symposium that UW System puts on, and he was just a phenomenal speaker, and he agreed to come for that. And then at the end of Thursday, we will have our diversity awards. Many of you nominated campus constituencies on the Fannie Hicklin Award, the Dr. Roger Pulliam Award, the John Trousdale Award, and we want to give our campus community and those persons their awards on Thursday. So we hope that you will enjoy the Diversity Conference. The Inclusive Excellence Committee has worked very hard to be able to deliver good and quality programming for you. Thank you so much for your attendance today, and we look forward to seeing you later on. Thank you.